I was through the tunnel and suddenly landed and watching the creation and birth of everything, earth to plants and animals. I can only describe it as being inside a gigantic kaleidoscope where the colorful images were changing designs rapidly, all breathtaking. To this day, I can cry thinking of it. If you like near-death experiences, consider subscribing. Also like the video so you can receive more interesting and eye-opening stories. Alright, let's get to the story. It happened August 29th on Friday afternoon, 1997. I stood with a shovel on the slope along the east side of my home where I had begun digging up grass to start a new garden. I stopped for a while and leaned against my shovel while thinking of the wonderful conversation I had with a doctor that morning. Then something got my full attention. It happened to me before, and it was a buzzing or ringing sound right before all sound disappeared. I was quite aware of the complete silence, as if nothing else existed. Time too had changed. It became slowed down or stopped. I felt soothed and completely focused by the silence. I strongly felt that it was an invitation to come on a journey. Feeling more curious than alarmed about what would come next, I let myself fall forward. My world disappeared, or maybe I did, and I began falling through a blackness that quickly turned into super fast moving streaks of brilliant colored light. The ride was smooth despite the speed that I was falling at. I felt invigorated and was without fear. To me, it was an adventure, and I looked forward to what would happen next. What happened next is a little hard to describe. I was through the tunnel and suddenly landed and watching the creation and birth of everything, earth to plants and animals, one right after the other. It was shown in such an extreme fast forward that my eyes became fast, so that I could view it all. I remember a seed then suddenly had roots which spread furiously fast through the soil, and then its life force pushed through, and the petals unfolded to become the most beautiful red rose. I noticed the color was more vibrant, as if it had life as well. The flower seemed to grow from seed to complete flower in less than a second. It was like seeing everything being born from conception to birth in the blink of an eye. I cannot say in words what it truly all was like. The colors I was seeing had evolved from dark hues of blacks, grays and browns to blues, greens, and then reds and yellows. Next, I found myself in a room. The room was filled with sumptuous pillows where I sat down and was treated to a show. I can only describe it as being inside a gigantic kaleidoscope where the colorful images were changing designs rapidly, all breathtaking. Afterwards, feeling very drowsy, I quickly fell asleep on the soft pillows. In the next moment, I was waking up in a placid blackness in space. There were tiny pinholes of starlight giving the impression of floating in outer space. I felt well rested and very calm after what seemed like a long sleep. I looked over to see myself in the distance. I watched myself wake up. I, the self I watched, was curled up in a fatal position. When I became aware that I could move about freely, I opened up and gently floated downward through the night above a new place while I waited for the sun to rise. I am now in a flower garden, a large and very crowded mass of colors in full bloom. The flowers were very tall and looked beautifully old world. This garden was the perfect greeting to the house it belonged to. It was a happy garden. It was alive with a childlike excitement. Here, my physical body was now completely gone. I was light and getting smaller, but becoming much more than before. I could fly all about the garden. My vision was extraordinary, and I could zoom in on the tiniest details. I felt very natural here, and the garden's joy made me feel like I belonged. There was always the me with the body, although not seen, watching the other me, a small ball of light, while experiencing everything the other did. I took notice of the flowers, of how they were alive and they were immersed in a love that was pure. To this day I can cry thinking of it. The garden's colors were also alive with hues that made every other colors at home dull. The flowers moved as if a gentle wind always was present. It was sunny, but the sun never hurt my eyes. The temperature was perfect, and I felt a sense of well-being as I never have. The sun lit up the petals and wings, making them transparent, and I would fly in to enjoy the intricate designs, like I did inside the kaleidoscope. The garden was entertaining me, and I felt not only love and joy there, but also a sense of fun. My ears could make out each bird and insect, but there was a particular sound, a buzzing, that was actually becoming obnoxious in its impatience for my attention. I flew to it and was face to face with a big fat bumblebee. It went into a flower and then suddenly was blown out by a tremendous explosion of pollen. I could see each tiny grain floating in slow motion. The expression on the bumblebee's face was hilarious, like it had the best orgasm ever. It looked me straight in the eyes, smiled, and flew off as I laughed out loud. The garden felt like the entire universe, and everything it held I could see in a single dewdrop on a flower's petal. I thanked God for letting me come here. I was having such a great time that I would have been content to stay and explore more, but then I felt him. I flew above and watched as the boy entered the garden path. The boy appeared to be around 14 years of age. He walked along a stone path which went through the center of the large flower garden and ended at the front door to the house. He wore a high-collar blue-gray jacket that looked like velvet, with shiny buttons down the front. I could see white ruffles of his shirt sticking out the jacket sleeves. His pants matched the jacket and were cuffed around his knees. He wore long, pale stockings and dark brown leather shoes which appeared well worn. The shoes had brass buckles and the sunlight bounced off of them as he walked. His longish brown curls moved gently and framed his smiling and radiant face. He carried a bouquet of flowers that he picked from a garden elsewhere. Despite his age, he had a confidence and sureness about him. The boy was happy and humming a song that sounded old and silly. The faster he walked, the faster he hummed, and it made me smile. He did not seem to notice me flying about him, or the other me watching it all from another place. As he entered the garden, the flowers were taller than he, and they were very excited by his presence. They truly loved this boy. I followed him closely and realized I could feel his joy. As we came closer to the front door, I noticed I became an invisible nothingness that could go through walls, and even the boy. I felt incredibly light, and every thought I had was good and beautiful. There wasn't the ticking of time passing and it would slow down or go backwards so that I could take every detail in. The girl lived in a charming country home that looked like it belonged in Europe, perhaps France. The house looked like light-colored stone bleached by the sun. The door was centered with a large window on both sides. The walls were very thick and windows set deep. The second-floor windows were much smaller, and I noticed wooden shutters, aged a beautiful bronze. The front door was a thing of beauty, with its solid craftsmanship and its layers of pale paint. I noticed a delicate webbing and texture that I had to fly up close to study it. The door reminded me of seashells as well. Adorning the door was an oval brass door knocker where I saw the boy's reflection in it as he went to use it. Time could go backwards so I could watch the boy approach the garden and feel the wonderful feelings all over again. We again got to the door, knocked, and we waited excitedly for it to open. The boy went in through the door, but I followed through the wall. The inside of the house was filled with sunlight and colors much like the garden. I noticed several vases of fresh-cut flowers throughout the large room. The furniture was beautifully crafted and covered in materials of floral designs and cheery colors. My eyes then looked towards the back, right side of the room at the bottom of the stairs, and I saw the girl. She was small and petite, looked about 13 or 14. She looked so lovely in her long, pale yellow satin dress fitted to her tiny waist. A matching colored ribbon was tied around her head, where long ringlets of light brown jumped around her shoulders. Her face really glowed and seemed transparent like the petals lit up by the sun. I felt with her the same as the boy, and can only describe it as pure joy. The girl's mother was standing close by her, and it was she who opened the door. I could not feel this woman's feelings, and although she seemed happy or pleased for her daughter, I noticed she was somewhat worried, but hid it from the girl who could barely contain her excitement. The girl ran down the steps to answer the door. Her mother didn't seem to think it was ladylike for the girl to have answered the door. We watched, again, the boy through the front window as he happily walked the garden path towards the door. I then felt for the first time a dread, and my eyes darted to the room on the left, which I only noticed now. It was a darkened room, but I could make out a man sitting in a chair looking out the other front window, watching the boy come closer. The chair was facing away from me, so could only see part of his head. My vision was blurry towards this room, not at all like the super clear vision everywhere else. Very reluctantly, I was about to go into this room, but something stopped me. The sudden urgency of time rushed in quickly, so I put the dark feeling away, and I moved back to the girl, as the boy knocked and the door was opened. The girl took a deep breath, so did I, as she opened the door. When the boy and girl finally were face to face, they didn't say one word. Instead, I felt everything they said. I felt every emotion of both of them and went back in time again, this time with her so I could feel her emotions, and watched through the window as he approached the garden. We both could barely contain our joy and ran down the stairs as he was about to knock. I watched them as they looked at each other with young smiles. Suddenly, I was inside the boy, seeing her through his eyes and also looking at him through her eyes. I then saw both their reflections looking back at me. What I felt next was simultaneously going through both of them and feeling their love. Then it was time to be rushed back to where I was before, standing on a slope leaning against my shovel. When I looked around, I was amazed how my vision still seemed clearer and the grass a much more vibrant green. I could see individual blades of grass which moved as if alive. Distant and close sounds of insects and birds seemed clearer and harmonious. I felt incredible and energetic. I felt happy, but also sad. After a while, the colors went normal, but horribly dull compared to that garden. Everything here is dull and dark in comparison. I did feel the presence of something much greater than us during my out-of-body experience. That does it for today's video. Let me know what you thought about it in the comment below.